because it is the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. And just because it falls on this particular year, I think the importance of the Battlefield Rehabilitation Program is really, we can showcase what we've been able to accomplish since 1999. And in 13, 14 years, the landscape has changed dramatically to help people understand and appreciate better what the battlefield looked like in 1863. The National Park Service does not have the money to fund this type of program. We could not have done it without companies like Apache donating these trees. (1863) was a pivotal year. In the spring of that year, the Battle of Chancellorsville, fought in just west of Fredericksburg, Virginia, was a resounding defeat for the Union Army. Robert E. Lee, the commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, realized that there was a chance here now to take the war out of Virginia. He decided to bring his army north into Maryland and Pennsylvania. To get there, they all had to come through Gettysburg. Lee had other ideas behind this too. Part of it was to pick up Union supplies to feed his army and supply the Southern war effort. What he did not know was that the Army of the Potomac was very, very close. Confederate troops that came to Gettysburg on June 30th came to just to find supplies and explore. They didn't really realize it was the Army of the Potomac until the first shot was fired and the infantry finally arrived. And they didn't scatter like militia. Under that first shot, they fought, and they fought really to the death out there west of town. The Peter Fry farm, which is right behind me, Fry owned quite a bit of land here, right along what we call Cemetery Ridge, the southern extension of Cemetery Hill. This would become the primary Union defensive position. Fry owned all the property in here. And as a self-sustaining, sufficient farmer, one of the elements he had was a small orchard on the north side of the Lydia Leister farm. Lydia Leister was a widow who lived in a small house right back here on the Tonytown Road. And that year, like many of the other fruit farmers and the other farmers here, was a very moist early summer. So the crops were really going to be good. On July 1st, at least for Peter Fry, his orchard was literally invaded by thousands of Union troops who moved to this area and encamped for the evening behind Cemetery Hill, his primary defensive position. As a result, his orchard trees wound up being consumed by the animals that accompanied the infantry, by the baggage wagons, the mules that brought the wagons up, the artillery that massed in there, and it really did a lot of damage. Basically, his orchard was lost because of this battle, because of the occupation and the mass of troops in that area there. In the aftermath of the battle, the landowners here who lost everything, they sold the property off, and as time went on, many of the smaller features or more important features of the battlefield were lost. Meadows, pastures, cropland began to become overgrown with trees, fence lines were lost. We lost a lot of information. And it wasn't until probably the 1970s, 1980s we began to reevaluate the importance of these landscape features on the battlefield. The Park Service undertook a general management plan in 1999 to restore the landscape back to its 1863 appearance, or as close to it as we can get. It's called the Battlefield Rehabilitation Program.
Recreating the orchards is especially important because, you know, pretty much every farm here would have had an orchard, and seeing them there just takes the visitor back in time a little bit. The Apache Foundation and the donation of the trees has enabled us to fill in a lot of those historic orchards to make the battlefield look more like it did when the armies fought here, and making the battlefield a much more meaningful experience, I think, for the visitors, because it enables, you know, guides and Park Service rangers to interpret the battlefield in a way that they couldn't just maybe 10 or so years ago.
Growing up here at Gettysburg, I mean, there was a lot of family pride in the fact that I had a great-great-grandfather that actually fought and died at Gettysburg. And having spent, you know, a summer working for the National Military Park in an early restoration program, it's just really, you know, tremendous that I've been able to come back working with Apache and actually see Apache's involvement with the tree restoration program that they've got going on here at Gettysburg National Military Park.
It's really important to us as historians as interpreters and as cultural resources specialists to preserve this battlefield site as a memorial to both armies, and not just come here and appreciate what the armies did here, but also what they saw. And part of what they saw were these orchards and the farm sites and the landscape and the fences, everything that's here. We could not have done it without important donations like this from Apache. The Civil War was the war of wars as far as the Americans are concerned, and it formed the way we are today. But if we look back in our past, the way the Civil War decided certain issues and made us the country we are today, we're much better off. And it all goes back to things that happened on battlefield sites like Gettysburg. And that's why these places are preserved as memorials to those armies that fought here, but also memorials to us as Americans.
Since 2009, the Apache Tree Grant Program has donated over 3,000 trees to the Gettysburg Foundation. Apache's Tree Grant Program has provided over 3 million trees to nonprofit organizations in 16 states since 2005. The program focuses on improving wildlife habitats, restoring storm damage, and enhancing urban forests.